It's like we're trying to develop things backwards. When we did that
Yeah.
discussion recently about the seeking a new approach, my contention was that that is always the last step, and we take that as the first step. Where very first we have a series of this is the thing that we all agree on, and then we like seek around the country for people to sign on to it, rather than all of those of us in our local area. This is what we do, and I want to make my all my neighbors who are working on rent control or whatever. I want to make those people into socialists. So within that context, I would like to start a socialist study group or something. And then eventually, because that's developed into something worth talking about, I want to tell people about it and find other groups that are doing the same thing. And then at some point, maybe later on with that, that becomes something of a national organization. But that's the reverse of the way that we do things. And Brendan, I wanted to ask you, you said in the rut we are in, you put this at the DSA. I was wondering if you could explain that.
Yeah, let me pull it up. It's a specific quote. So this is a quote from Draper's. The second proposal, which talking about like the different ruts we're in. He had talked about one already. This is the second way out of the rut that just leads you back into the rut. The second proposal is one that aims at the same result by a different route, launching a sect whose distinguishing programmatic point is that it will voluntarily eschew distinguishing programmatic points. This is to be achieved by limiting the program to some minimum socialist or radical basis on which everyone can agree. And I said at the DSA specifically because this is the DSA problem. And I think this has been the DSA problem for years. I remember, I think it was Buffalo, New York. DSA was running a candidate, and the candidate was asked in an interview, are you a socialist? And her response was, yes, I think we should tax the rich. And I'm like, if that's the bar for socialists, then we don't have a functional language for what socialism is, which means we are not a functioning organization at this point. The same is true for how certain aspects of the DSA, when certain policies are passed, will be like the DSA passed this policy, when what's actually happening is the DSA endorsed a policy that was put up by a different group. There's a lot of like subterfuge where we're kind of like talking around the actual like programmatic points in order to like build this mass movement, to build this power base, is what is always said. Like, we're building power. So we need to make sure our language is like very vague. We don't actually know what the DSA is. Like, is the DSA a democratic socialist organization? Is it a social democratic organization? Is it a socialist organization? Does it have a party these are things that probably should be known. And this actually goes to an earlier point, going back into the text a little bit. Essentially the point, here we go. Also in the rut we're in, literally the quote above mine in the notes. Incompatible political programs can be held together, at least for a historical period, within the framework of a party or movement. For the cement which holds such a formation together is its role in the class struggle itself. As long as this is not the real situation of the movement, though, nothing else can take its place, including exhortations against sectarianism. So like what we're seeing is this attempt by the DSA to just like gloss over what are fundamental differences in different sects or parts of its organization by just saying we're democratic socialists, we're socialists, look at our NPC, like it's so ideologically diverse and everything. And what it's doing is just glossing over the fact that like, no, we're still in this period of sectarianism that Draper's been describing. Like, we're 50 years into this at this point, and this can't be the way out of it. And I'm on a huge rant about the DSA right now because I'm really feeling it. But
you move from a de jure sectarianism to a de facto sectarianism.
Exactly. And that, I mean, this is what Jason was describing in the beginning with the emergence of these different caucuses and everything.
Yeah.
Is that what we've actually probably seen is like a reduction of the worldview. In Draper's time, the sects were all like the sects versus the world. And so the world was, and so you had like a bunch of weird sects, like people doing really strange stuff, strange ideologies. It's how you get like
facades.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's like kind of confined within democratic socialism. What were you saying,
Yeah.
Nathan?
Yeah.
I just have a quick question.
hmm
Okay, so I'm not in the DSA, but I have been learning a lot from all what you guys talk about regarding the DSA, and I wonder, like, do you think that the socialists that the socialists in our groups decide to stay involved in the DSA as maybe a feeling that that's the only like positive organization or like the
I'm
most
involved in
active?
the DSA.
Well, do you feel that it's like the reason to stay involved in it is because they're probably the most proactive organization amongst all the current sects? Like they feel like like from what I'm noticing is that they work with the current capitalist system, right? The current electoral system. And a lot of the other sects don't at all. And so I wonder if maybe is that the reason why? Like they feel like through that type of activism it's better than nothing?
Well, I think, or I'll say something really quick and then I'll give it to you. Sorry. The reason I'm in it is honestly what I was saying earlier is that I think the air of the socialist movement has kind of been like constrained into the DSA at this point. So if you are having like a serious political discussion, the people that you're going to be having that serious political discussion with will most often be a part of the DSA, just because we've gone from this thing that Draper's described in 1970, which is not good. Like what Draper's describing isn't good, of like a bunch of little groups kind of just like shouting their thing into the world, into a thing that's actually like reduced our horizon pretty significantly. And so now that's where all discussion is being held. So like I think, at least for me, that's where I'm involved in it.
Yeah, for me, like there definitely is just like kind of a cynical, like, look, I gotta have some socialist friends, I gotta have some people to talk to and drink beers with and whatnot, and I'm pretty good about having like, my friends outside of that like world, but like it's nice to have people who fucking agree with you and you don't have to tiptoe around subjects or some shit like that. When it comes to like the DSA as a whole, I do think there's a very there's a contradiction throughout between like the various local chapters and nationals, which chapters tend to dominate. It's LA and New York, I think, for the most part, dominate like the national like DSA. Like I'm in Southern California, but I'm not in LA, and we fucking hate LA for that because they are totally democratic capitulationists. And I will say, like, ideologically, for the most part out here, where like you talk to the people, they come across more radical than like you'd expect. But then you do start like actually looking at like what people are actually doing and the reality of the situation, and it doesn't really reflect that. I think that has to do with part of the incoherence of the DSA as an organization. And I think even when we talk about caucuses, because I think 100% they come to play the role as a sect. The people in my chapter, they're trying to start up, and I think it died out pretty fast, but it's called like the Red Labor Caucus. And like, it was like ostensibly like it seemed Marxist. It seemed like, to me, it just seemed like kind of what the Marxist Unity Group was doing. I didn't really understand why it was different. The only reason I was like, sure, I'll look into what you guys are doing. I'll go through your educational program thing. I mean, like, or at least like read through some of the materials and stuff. Like I was interested, and I was like, I don't know, because once again, you start to see how, because all of a sudden now, not only is this like replicating the sect form, but it's like replicating it in a disavowed form within this other organization. So it has a much more restricted like horizon, and like a much more restricted like the resources that you have to sustain something like that. And like, I don't know, like I just don't see how like having a disavowed like kind of like sect but not a sect, we're not calling it that, but it does do a lot of the things that a sect is, does functionally, like if that's better. And like I will say, I also have like people who I've met through the DSA out here who did turn towards the sect world, because like even though like the DSA would try and like do those like satisfy those impulses, I guess, that because like it is what it is and it's trying to be what it's trying to be, like, which isn't always super clear what that is, but that like it doesn't satisfy those people either. So then they'll go turn to the PSL in this situation and whatnot. And like, that's kind of my experience of the whole thing. Like I will still show up to like events and like people who I like to talk to. I don't have a lot of faith in like, oh, this is going to be the thing that really leads us to the utopian horizon.
I have to say, I tend to agree. I was in the DSA from like 2017 until around, I guess, only until 2019, almost 2020, whatever. I'll just say I was in the DSA for maybe like 3 years. And I was in the ISO before that, and before that I was in the YCL, and for my entire life, from before I could drive up until around the age of, I want to say like 33, I was involved in something or another, some project on the left, which was trying to make some kind of headway, trying to make some big case for ourselves for the project of socialism. And toward the end, I would say that my reasoning for my continued involvement was similar to what's been said already. I'm not going to make the case to any of you or to any of the listeners, because that is a fair number more than us here. I'm not going to make the case that anybody should not join the DSA or that anybody should quit the DSA. But I'm not going to. I let my dues lapse, and I called them and said, please take me off the list. Don't contact me anymore. Like, I don't want anything to do with this. I didn't want a phony involvement. What I want, what I described in that episode we did, the seeking a new approach, is still, I think, a better model. It's a better thing to do. But there are alternatives to the microsect, and so I guess what I'm curious now is if we can talk about the what then, number 6. Brandon, you wrote a comment which I think is best contextualized by first reading the quote. So I'm curious if you would do that for us.
Can I say one Mimi Hegelian thing real quick? Could we say
Always.
Could we say that the sects failed to understand the whole point about the Owl of Minerva always arising at dusk, and the wings of whatever? We know what I'm saying. The wisdom always arrives too late, so they don't understand that. Like, by the time you have the theory, the situation's changed, and you can't just bring that wisdom down and know what to do. But on the other hand, the response, the DSA sort of response to the sect is just like, yeah, we shot the owl. The owl is dead.
Yeah, it's funny. I would agree with that, but I would counter that mentality, not yours, but the one that you're describing, with a different quote from Tony Cliff, who is the sectarian extraordinaire. Actually, he said that with the eating comes the appetite, which is to say, you have to do stuff before you figure out precisely what to do. You have to start doing. And then in the process of doing, then you learn, oh, this is a better way to do things. If you're waiting until your theory is perfect, you're going to miss dusk a couple of times.
Yeah, until you can act. Yeah, you can't wait till you can act with complete certainty. Like, there will always be a risk. There will always be a wager in what you're trying to do.
Or as Lenin said, sometimes history needs a push.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the American left is that we're an ideology of like perfectionists who also procrastinate too much. Okay, anyway, back to the text.
No, that's right. That's perfect.
We enter into what then? What was my comment? Oh, there has never been a single case of a sect, Draper says, which developed into or gave rise to a genuine socialist movement by only the process that sects know, the process of accretion. The sect mentality typically sees the road ahead as one in which the sect, one's own sect, will grow and grow because it has the correct political program. This is what you were just talking about, Trent, until it becomes a larger sect, then a still larger sect, eventually a small mass party, then larger, until it becomes large and massy enough to impose itself as the party of the working class. But in 200 years of socialist history, this has never actually happened, in spite of innumerable attempts. I wrote just a quick note underneath. This generally seems to be a problem of the naturalization of some marketplace of ideas, treating the sect as a business with the best product competing on a fair and open market, compared to what it actually is. Like, the mass movement is not that, as like Draper was describing earlier. Like, it's a key coalition of working class and socialist elements in decisive spheres where the means of production can be taken over or blocked in a way to like hamper capitalist development. That's my inner Leninist coming out, but I think it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just because this gets back to a point that you had raised early on, Nancy. It says, what Lenin helped to launch was a Marxist political center in a non-sect form, in the form of a periodical manner manned by an editorial board, Iskra. So I guess
this was a 1-hour podcast saying the Regrettable Century is launching a paper.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, so like raises some big questions, like in the era of the digital mass communications and podcasts, is a periodical like Iskra still the order of the day? And
is that like the thing that's something we would call a Marxist center or a socialist center or whatever? Like, is that what it would form around? Like nowadays, like that's kind of my question.
I suppose it could be. I suppose that's definitely a possibility. I do like the fact that one of the things we've accomplished with this podcast is that we have, like we're doing this right now, where we have this, larger and smaller and it's periodically different crews of people, but usually it's been pretty consistent. This communication about these ideas and this methodology, which is I could write an article and upload it in my blog and say, hey, everybody, this is what I think about this thing, and hope that eventually over the years it would produce something like what I can say for a fact is being produced like right now. So in some ways I would say, yes, this is an improvement. This is in real time. We can get a sense of the way in which the outreach and the intake is much more, we can put our finger on it. We can feel it. We can actually see that it's having some effects. It's doing something. But I don't
often.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure 100% about that either.